Welcome back to the movie recap. Today's movie will be a 1998 American epic war film titled The Thin Red Line. So sit back, relax and enjoy the video. The movie begins with Whit recalling his mother's death and the calmness she had when she died. He's living on an island with a tribe of natives, fitting into their lifestyle and beliefs. In one instance, he's told that the people there are a little intimidated by him because he looks like a soldier. Then, suddenly, the atmosphere turns tense when Whit sees an American ship in the distance. Suddenly, he gets put in the brig by a man named Welsh, the first sergeant of C Company, which is Whit's company. Welsh interrogates Whit, questioning his AWOL habits and life beliefs. However, Whit remains calm, unbothered by the insults that Welsh throws at him. Finally, Welsh ends the conversation, telling Whit that he will be transferred to the medics as a stretcher bearer. Whit accepts his fate with a smirk. The general of C Company maps out their game plan on the top deck. First, to take control of American shipping lanes, they would have to overtake Guadalcanal Island, which the Japanese currently invaded. After the briefing, the general walks off to meet Tall, the lieutenant colonel of the campaign. He praises Tall for his perseverance in the army as well as his disinterest in retiring. Below deck, one of the privates named Train experiences a minor anxiety attack for the incoming war. In another part of the ship, James Starros, the captain of C Company, walks through the cabins of his men. In one of the beds lie Jack Bell, a private. Bell explains to another soldier that he was in the Corps of Engineers. After resigning a few years back because of his wife, the military had told him that he'd never be commissioned again, but here he is, back in the military's grasp. Brief clips of his beloved wife, Marty, pass by. She is with another man whose face can't be seen. As soldiers are getting ready to get off the ship, Tall orders Starros to give a frontal assault once C Company reaches the beach. Starros agrees, and the soldiers hurry down the ship into separate boats and make way for the shore. On the way to the beach, fear starts to build up within the soldiers, uncertain of what is about to happen. When they arrive, Starros gets updated about the situation of the soldiers who were already there on the island. C Company trudges through the dense jungles and mangroves toward the camp. On the way there, they come across two brutally dismembered men. The soldiers immediately become nauseous, dreading the upcoming battle, which starts to intimidate them. When they reach the camp, Whit walks around and tends to wounded soldiers. He questions the reality of a man's soul, whether men are all part of the same soul or if each man is just trying to find his own saving grace. During the evening, Tall orders Starros to take on a hill by frontal assault. Starros submits but tells Tall that some soldiers are starting to pass out because there isn't enough water. Tall scoffs, dismisses the issue and walks away. Starros submits to Tall's orders and tells White, the second lieutenant, to scout across the field and find possible enemy locations. Later, Starros prays for the strength and perseverance to lead his men. The next day, a series of explosions scatter across the fields to assist C Company. As the company gets ready to move, a soldier by the name of Seco starts throwing up. After an argument with another soldier named Keck, Welsh permits Seco to return to the medics in camp. Starros and his men remain at the bottom of the hill while the first sets of soldiers start moving forward, crouching through the tall grass. Everything seems to be going according to plan until two men are shot. Gunfights ensue, and grenades are thrown, killing many soldiers from the impact. Some soldiers start to break down while others hide in the grass in fear. Starros tells his men to calm down and calls for stretcher bearers. Whit arrives and asks Starros permission to fight. When Starros approves, Welsh visibly becomes annoyed. As the battle worsens, Starros and Tall argue over the phone. Tall, who seems to misunderstand the situation, praises Starros for his leadership. He orders Starros to advance. Dumbfounded by the noise and casualties happening around him, Starros gathers his men and moves forward. The soldiers stay hidden in the grass. Dahl, one of the soldiers, spots Japanese soldiers and shoots one of them. Enthusiastic, he tries to shoot more Japanese soldiers. Another gunfight begins, and Starros' men get hit by grenades and explosions. They quickly retreat to a ledge and wait for reinforcements. Keck, one of the soldiers behind the ledge, decides to throw a grenade but accidentally pulls the pin with the grenade still in his hand. To protect the other soldiers, he uses himself to shield them from the impact, consequently blowing up parts of his body. While Keck slowly dies, Whit holds him, thanking him for protecting them. Next, Keck asks Dahl to write a letter to an unspecified woman. Dahl agrees but later admits that he wouldn't write the letter. As more soldiers advance, shells drop, creating multiple explosions. Some soldiers are seen sitting on the ground, looking hopeless, while others lie dead. Finally, a soldier runs to Starros' men, yelling about how he lost 12 soldiers. Then, hysterical and angry, he walks away from the battle. Suddenly, A wounded soldier comes out of the smoky explosion, screaming in agony. The screaming soldier shakes Staros and his men. Determined to end his pain and protect the location of Staros' men, Welsh runs to him and gives him morphine. As the young soldier whimpers and dies, Welsh shows him pity but runs back to his group. When Staros commends him for his courage, Welsh shuns him away with bitterness. Tal calls Staros in the midst of the fight and orders him to send all his men up the hill to engage. Staros refuses, telling Tal that the Japanese have too much artillery. Tal clings to his pride and yells at Staros, giving him exact orders to send everyone to the battlefield. Staros, unwilling to risk the lives of his men, refuses and suggests a flanking position. Tal orders him to attack, but Staros stands his ground, asking for reinforcements. Tal concedes and tells Staros to wait with his men. When Tal arrives, he sees the reality of the situation. He orders Bell to take 6 volunteers to see what's happening over the ridge. When the group arrives at the ridge, Bell tells them he will go alone. The moment is cut by clips of his wife, again with a man. After crawling through the grass, Bell sees a bunker at the top of the hill. He throws a grenade, causing enemy fire to start from the bunkers. He counts them and returns to C Company, telling them what he's seen. When Tal hears this, he apologizes to the soldiers for the insufficient amount of water they've received. He then asks for volunteers to help take the bunker to take over the ridge. Bell, Witt, and 5 others take the challenge. Back at the camp, tension builds up as Tal questions Staros' leadership choices. Tal reminds him that war will cost lives and asks if he is ready to give up the lives of his men. Staros' reaction remains unclear but agrees with Tal nevertheless. In the fields, Welsh talks to Witt about the depressive truth of war, how it's useless and makes no difference whether who lives or dies. He tells Witt that this earth is all there is, there's no heaven, hell, or any other supernatural world where everything's better. Despite Welsh's pessimism, Witt remains hopeful and undisturbed by the dark truth. As the next day begins, Tal prepares the volunteers to take the bunker. He reminds John, the chosen leader, to use a whistle if the plan succeeds. As the group climbs up the grassy hill, they hide behind a rock. They agree to drop shells across the bunkers for cover as they move toward the enemy. When the explosions begin, they successfully get closer, hiding behind another big rock. Suddenly, a soldier in their group gets shot. This kickstarts an exchange of fire between the group and the hidden bunker rifles. Witt takes a moment to look at the wounded soldier with empathy. The group quickly moves to a different spot, firing at the enemy. Finally, they manage to shoot some Japanese soldiers that go out of the bunker but eventually get cornered. Filled with adrenaline, Dahl rushes to the enemy out in the open and throws a grenade, distracting the enemy. At the same time, the rest of the group falls back. As the fight intensifies, the soldiers find the bunkers where the Japanese are hiding as the battle intensifies. From there, they attack and take some Japanese soldiers hostage. John blows the whistle as planned, and Tal's men quickly come to their aid. After the fight, Bell is dumbfounded and remorseful about having had to shoot a man. Witt, however, was with the hostages, the same calm lingering in his eyes as he offered a cigarette to one of the hostages with sympathy. While the soldiers clean up the battlefield, Tal praises John and asks him to lead the B Company. John thanks Tal but urgently asks about the water crisis. Tal tells him that it will be provided in a few hours. He tells John that if some soldiers pass out, there's nothing they can do about it and that they should focus more on the war's progress. John says nothing but is bothered about Tal's insensitivity to the soldiers. When Tal senses John's unease, he pulls John aside to show him that they should take advantage of this opportunity to break the Japanese apart. He rants about how long he's waited for a breakthrough like this and insists that they should advance to defeat the Japanese. After scanning over the dead bodies of soldiers, C Company starts preparing for the next battle. In the forest, the soldiers quietly inch further inward until the Japanese break the silence. In an instant, the battle begins. The soldiers start invading the Japanese camps, progressing quickly to victory. Even in the midst of battle, some Japanese soldiers become hysterical, screaming in agony at the cruelty that war brings. After their victory, the soldiers round up the Japanese. While some physically assault other Japanese soldiers, Witt helps the wounded, even the enemies. As some Japanese soldiers cry out for the death of their brethren, some American soldiers watch them with pity, knowing exactly how it feels to lose people in war. After that, some soldiers, including Witt, go to a nearby pond to wash themselves. While drinking, Witt recalls the life he had with the natives. He remembers the peace and freedom he once felt when he lived with them. Inside one of the Japanese camps, Tal tells Staros that he is removing him from his position as captain. Tal tells him that he isn't fit to be a captain because of his unwillingness to give up the lives of his comrades. In response, Staros asks Tal if he's ever had anyone die in his arms. Tal doesn't reply. Paul tells him that he'll recommend him for the Silver Star and Purple Heart, but despite Tull's flattery, Staros remains pained. Outside, Welsh reads a letter that states that the soldiers will be given a week-long rest. The soldiers celebrate with alcohol and laughter. A short while after that, Staros talks to his men for his final goodbyes. However, his men thank him for looking out for them. Staros explains that they're like his children but that he's glad to be relieved of such a tiresome position and flies back home. Bell, always thinking about Marty like usual, thinks about the man he was before, the man he still wants to be. He talks about love. He questions where it comes from and who really started it. Nevertheless, he praises her passion for setting him free and helping him to persevere. In the wounded camp, Welsh opens up about his inability to feel numb like regular soldiers. He talks about how he is already frozen, like he knew how the war would feel even before it began. He thinks it prepared him for the actual battle. A few days later, Belle receives a letter from Marty. In the letter, she says that she has fallen in love with an Air Force captain and wants to divorce. Belle drowns in disbelief. He walks away, anxious and dumbfounded by what he just read. Meanwhile, Whit returns to the native tribe he lives with. However, the natives treat him differently now. They shun him away in fear and disgust. Whit feels alienated and discouraged. He feels like they are now strangers, like they've never lived together. It's like he has lost his family. Back at camp, Welsh and Whit meet in an old house. Whit asks Welsh why he turns cold towards people so often. Welsh doesn't explicitly say anything and talks about how amazed he is at Whit's optimism, even in the darkest situations. Whit ends the conversation by telling Welsh that he still sees a spark in him. Later on, in a mission once again against the Japanese, the soldiers find themselves in a precarious spot in a river. With the new captain unsure of what to do, he sends Fife, Coombs, and a voluntary Whit to see where the Japanese are. As the trio sneaks through the jungle, they eventually spot the Japanese soldiers nearby. They try to rush back to their company but the Japanese spot them and release fire, shooting Coombs. Whit tells Fife to go back to the company and warn them of the enemy while he stays with Coombs. As Fife runs back, Coombs slowly dies in Whit's arms. Knowing the bad situation, Whit makes noise and tries to distract the Japanese. His plan works successfully as he leads the Japanese to an open field where he is cornered. Despite the many guns that are pointed at him, Whit, as always, remains calm. Suddenly, he raises his gun and is shot dead the next moment, receiving the answer to his personal question if he will ever accept death in the same calm manner as his mother. The soldiers create a burial for Whit. When all the other soldiers leave, Welsh crouches beside Whit's grave and asks him where his spark is. For the first time, Welsh cries for someone's death. The movie ends with Welsh's thoughts about how people either die or live in lies. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.